Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Marley Long, and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. So today's webinar is going to focus around bridging IT and business expectations for SharePoint, and this is a Interlock and Beezy collaboration. Interlock is the company I work for, also known as our product CardioLog Analytics. A bit of webinar housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. If you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who's signed up with the recording as well. And you are welcome to connect with us on Twitter during the webinar. Our Twitter handle is @CardioLog, as well as Beezy's Twitter handle is @followbeezy. And again, if you have any questions, we'll leave about 10 minutes towards the end of the webinar for questions Q&A, and you can always send your questions through the questions box within the GoToWebinar panel. In regards for today's webinar agenda, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a bit about Interlock and who we are, and then we'll introduce Beezy as our collaborative guest. And then to conclude, we'll do a Q&A at the end. And as I mentioned, we will have some time towards the end of the Q&A, so if you have any questions, you can send them through the panel, and we'll get to those at the end of our session. So we will be introducing how to join IT and business via social collaboration with Beezy, and then after we will discuss SharePoint Analytics, so how to join IT and business via SharePoint Analytics. Brief introduction. Interlock has been around for about 10 years now, since 2005, and we're based out of Boston. Over the past 10 years, we've been focused on web analytics designed for SharePoint. Our flagship solution is CardioLog Analytics. Specifically, it's built for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 03 to 2013, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. And we can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and the like. All right, and now we're gonna go ahead and get things kicked off with, we've got Christian Buckley presenting with us from Beezy. So Christian, I'll go ahead and make you presenter.
All right, and can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Let's check to see if everyone else can hear you. I'm getting yes. Okay.
Let me make sure I've got the screen. Should see a bunch of blue there. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right and see my screen. All is good. Thanks, Marley. And I am happy to be here presenting today and about a topic that I'm doing a lot of writing and speaking about. It's just a very fascinating topic for me. For those that aren't familiar with me and my background, so I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Beezy. I've been here for just under 4 months, and I'm a 4-time Office 365 MVP. For those that don't know my background, so I spent a couple years inside of Microsoft in the early days of what is now Office 365. I joined in 2006 a team called Microsoft Managed Solutions, which then went on to become rebranded and launched as the Business Productivity Online Services, or BPOS, which then was rebranded as Office 365 on the dedicated side. So it was the team that was spun out of Microsoft IT with the charter to go and create a hosted version of SharePoint. So it's got some good ties back to the SharePoint platform, certainly the online portion of it. I got involved with SharePoint back in 2005 officially, where I was deploying it for a customer. And so I've always felt like I came into SharePoint a little bit late there in 2005, but Funny enough, I was not a fan of SharePoint in 2005. I actually tried to talk this customer that I was consulting for out of the idea of moving to SharePoint. But over the course of that year, I came to really like the platform and saw the possibilities. And so in February or actually March of 2006, joined Microsoft. But you can reach me, cbuck at Beezy. Of course, I do a lot of blogging out on Buckley Planet and write for various sources like IT Unity and CMS Wire. You can find me on Twitter, of course, at Buckley Planet. And then I also run a monthly show called Collab Talk on IT Unity. I don't know if anybody has participated in that. And also run kind of in parallel a monthly tweet jam, which I just ran yesterday. But anyway, what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to, well, actually, you know what? Let me forward the slide. There it goes. Beezy, if you're not familiar with us, Beezy's been around for about 4 years. Beezy is known for creating a Yammer-like solution for on-prem, but that's not all that we do. So we extend, expand, and enhance what both SharePoint and Yammer do. So we have software that provides additional collaborative capability on top of SharePoint. We were built on and built for SharePoint, whether online or on-prem. And I'm going to be showing you a little bit about what we're doing. I'm not really going in and doing a demo, or it's not really a pitch of the product. I'm going to talk a bit more about how we approach our customer engagements, because it's really has more to do with this topic of bridging the IT and business user expectations around SharePoint. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Really talking about the process that we go through and my personal experiences getting the two sides to connect, because I'm assuming that the majority of you that are joining recognize that there is this disconnect in your own organization, or wondering, what are some of the ways that we could get past these barriers and get the business side and IT to be working more closely together. Again, because you have to assume that if people are talking, we're going to get more accomplished, and then we're going to have better systems and solutions that will develop together. So I'm going to start out with some IT truths. So the first truth being that the most common failure of SharePoint has nothing to do with the technology. Now, I'm not saying that SharePoint doesn't have holes, it doesn't have gaps. It certainly does, and that's actually where the partner ecosystem, the rich partner ecosystem, has thrived over the last decade around SharePoint, is filling these gaps. But as a technology, it does certain things. It has features and capability. There's things that it doesn't do. Those are fairly well known. Where most organizations go wrong is in the implementation, so that they're unable to accomplish what their goals are, or even determine what those goals are. Very few organizations have really taken the time to go through and understand, one, what SharePoint can and can't do. This is part of where the communication breakdown, it impacts your ability. Just go to take advantage of what the platform can do and using it to its fullest. And then the other side of the lack of communication, and it's a certain truth in my experiences of working with IT, is that different people will step forward and say, hey, this has been a success, or that project has been a failure. I've certainly been part of a number of deployments of various platforms where certain directors or VPs just wanted to claim, hey, this is a win. We went out and we successfully did this. And yet there wasn't an agreement over what the measurements of that success were. So it's one thing to go out there and say, hey, we successfully deployed SharePoint. You may have met your deployment schedule, you may have been on time and under budget, but if people aren't using the platform a month later, was it really a success? So what are those factors of success? Can you claim success if you can't monitor it, if you can't measure that success? And then do you have a method in place for managing changes as they come to the platform? So why do the implementations fail? And it's communication is the #1 problem. And I saw this over and over again where the technology was blamed for what it was unable to do. A lot of times it wasn't so much the technology as the speed at which the IT team was able to deliver on the ever-shifting requirements from the business. So you have a failure of the business to really define what is needed, what is wanted, what are the priorities, a failure of IT delivery to then provide on those unruly expectations. And then they have their own, not that IT is perfect in any way, I've been on both sides. And it doesn't matter. These things happen whether it's on-prem and you're trying to do something very customized, or online, you're using Office 365 and everything is as out of the box as possible. Doesn't matter. These impacts are the same no matter where you are. There's a great quote out of the Social Organization by Bradley and McDonald. I highly recommend you go take a look at that. But talking about it's a fundamentally management challenge, not a technology implementation of what makes these things successful. So it's a matter of going in and fixing the communication issue, and that's what I want to focus on. Now, at the root of all of this, we're talking about SharePoint, and I'm going to share kind of my experiences and the Beezy implementation kind of best practices. But it is still the technologies, the underlying, the enabling factor here, but it isn't what we're trying to solve. It's not where the problem lies. So why is business and IT, isn't it healthy that you have this pushback on both sides? Why does it matter if they're fighting? Who should be leading the collaboration platform? Who owns SharePoint? Is it an IT thing? Well, they're actually maintaining the technology, or it's the business stakeholders because the business, they're really in charge of, it's their content, their processes, their systems that are at stake. The IT team wants the system to be efficient. They want it to be secure. That they need to make sure that it's compliant, that certain regulatory, legal rules are being met. But it also needs to be easy to maintain, because at the end of the day, no matter how much the business says, "Hey, we own this. This is ours," when something doesn't work the way they want, they go running back to IT to complain. Hey, you've got to get this working. That's that battle. Business users, of course, they want to have this consumer-like experience. They want to be able to run the platform on their own. They want to be able to access their data anytime, anywhere, any device, whether it's secure or not. They don't care. They want to be able to use their personal phone or their work device to access that information and get work done where needed. Unfortunately, when it comes to SharePoint and these collaboration capabilities, these two sides really collide when you have no system in place, no methodology to kind of manage these activities and these needs between these two constituencies. So that's where that things really kind of butt heads there. When they join forces, of course, when they start working together, you get increased productivity, and it really starts to open up options. And I've seen this happen, and having this alliance between the two sides, it means that you can then go and focus more on the end user experience. You hear a lot of talk out there about the user experience, and yet most people don't really understand. They see it just at the surface. Oh yeah, UX, and we're going to improve the UI. UI is just one aspect of the user experience, but they don't solve the underlying communication issues that separate IT and the business around that user experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you've seen me present on this, I've been talking about this for a couple years now. This slide is kind of a version that was shared by Microsoft a couple years back when they launched their whole marketing campaign of work like a network. And I think they lost some people on that concept, but I think it was overall it was sound. It was this idea that you don't just work with your small team, that you are constantly going and leveraging people and experiences and knowledge that are outside of your own business group, and you need to be able to even better leverage the knowledge and the information assets across that network. But there's really three aspects to any collaboration strategy that you need to think about and have a strategy for. Is the people, is the process that maybe there's a key process or multiple processes that you run your business on. And I often refer to the process as, what are these key workloads or these business systems? And then you have the actual technology. And so when you look at these three and you break it down, the people, of course, is the most important aspect of this. You can have a close tie with your people, strong communication with the people you're trying to serve in your team or your across your business. You can have weak process and weak technology, but if you have a strong people-centric strategy, you can still be largely successful. Now, of course, things work best for your business when people, process, and technology are all aligned, but I'm just kind of making the point that the priority should be on making sure that people, their experiences are first and foremost to all of your strategies. Because no matter how beautiful, technically accurate, and robust the solution is, it'll be a waste of time and money if in the end the end users reject it. So second would be the process. So your alignment with your business processes. I guess I should forward this along. Because you can have people on board, but to show that return on investment, that ROI for your business, you need to have things aligned with those business processes. And I often tell people, it's like, look, the technology is the least important of these. If you have your people on board and they're excited, and you can focus on improving and optimizing process, the people and the process side of things, you can see organizations that are on woefully outdated technology. It doesn't matter. They're efficient. I always tell people about, I had a former development organization that was on an old 2007 platform, and they were being forced to move to 2013, and they just kept saying, it's like, look, we don't need it. Our processes work. Our scripts that we use, they had a whole Scrum process where they were using various lists and a couple of sites. They had all their asset management set up in a way, and they were essentially using SharePoint as a content repository to do their kind of build management development. It was just a very agile method using just SharePoint lists to move their their various requests and issues back and forth. They said, please don't touch it. And what happened was that the business said, nope, we want everybody to be on the latest. We want to be able to tell Microsoft that we are updated, we are on SharePoint 2013. So they went ahead and updated that system from 2007 to 2013, and it broke business processes. It caused some confusion around data. They actually lost some of their functionality because they had these little scripts and tools that they had developed, some third party, and they were fine the way that it was. And so in this case, the business didn't focus on the people. It wasn't looking at the process. It was focused on the technology, and they lost productivity around that development organization. So when the business blocks IT, so when basically you have, and I'm sure we've all had these experiences where the business comes in and says, hey, we're going to dictate what we need. It gives so it kind of puts IT over in this bucket, like you will come in and execute on what we plan. It creates this kind of a divide, this walled mentality with IT, this us versus them, and can impact the process where the business teams are focused on this is what we need, ignoring the charter that IT may have, and it's just not a two-way conversation. And it can kind of give your workloads, the business processes, kind of a spin there, as you saw with the little animation. Tried to be fancy there. When IT ignores the business, the other way around, when they say, hey, we've got this technology, what it can do is they push it could kind of compress the people and their needs and the business processes. And you see this, a great example of this was with a customer down in Johannesburg that the IT team came in and announced that basically it was a deployment meeting. We were talking about where the teams were, the success of the adoption and the training strategies on these new solutions that were built. But IT had come in and made a decision and said, you know what, we're going to make this fundamental switch, and it's going to impact all of our hardware, it's all the software, all the solutions that were just deployed. So they made this decision by fiat. They just came in and said, hey, we've done it, we signed an agreement with this other third party, and they didn't discuss it with the business at all, and just crushed everything that had just been, all the progress that had made with users. It was a clear example of where technology comes in for technology's sake, and they may have the best intentions. They may come into a situation and say, look, we're not compliant, or hey, we need to upgrade our hardware, or we need to upgrade these systems. And this is like I mentioned with my this development team, where the business had a very sound reason for coming in and forcing this development team to move to the latest technology. In this case, the engineering team was the development organization was actually the end users and their processes. But a technology decision was made without taking into account what was happening with the business, and kind of caused conflict between the people and the process side of things. So what we all see is that we are creating these silos, and how can we get past these silos? What can we do to break these things down? My experience, and I've done this a couple times, my background going way back 25 years ago, I started out as a business analyst and technical project manager. I spent a lot of time building out project management organizations and governance bodies. And I don't mean, there's the corporate governance and IT governance. And I'm thinking of this not as a specific methodology here, but just the idea that there's a governing body that looks at and manages change coming inside of the organization, that takes into account both the business requirements and talks with end users and the business needs, and provides that communication back to IT, gets buy-in from leadership. So it's that change management infrastructure that allows you to go in and have those conversations and make changes where needed. So it's not about specifically about the governance body. It's not about going in and saying, hey, we're going to put this bureaucracy in place. In fact, try to make it as streamlined, as simple as possible, but have key stakeholders from across the business. I mean, it's a longer conversation about what makes a successful governance body, but having a team in place that is reviewing these requests as they come in, and a lot of IT organizations actually have kind of a front door policy where they're taking these requests and better manage those requests from the end users. It's not about the methodology. So especially if you come from a project management background, there are a lot of different methodologies out there. Honestly, I don't care what methodology you use. Having some standards in place so people know what they're dealing with and how to work with you. It's all about starting up the dialogue and having a method for people to communicate. It's all about providing that transparency into the requests that are being made. So business users can bring forward their requests that as IT responds and says, hey, here are the constraints, here are the concerns, here's the time frame, here are the people that we have, the budget that we're working with. If all of those things are transparent, then end users, the business side, are going to be more accepting of the decisions that are made. And I've got a great example of this. And I've used this in a number of presentations, but it's not that my experience, not that this worked perfectly, but I think this largely achieved the goal. My last team inside Microsoft, for about a year, we struggled with trying to juggle the various, we were a shared services team, so I had managed project managers and engineers and analysts, and we were kind of a PMO, but we actually maintained a number of systems, including all of the SharePoint systems across this online services organization, which is about 16 to 1,800 people. But for about a year, we were juggling these things. We had a complex SharePoint environment. We were doing some degree of portfolio management, had various dashboards, different project managers that were assigned to different business units, and we're meeting with them multiple times a week and trying to communicate. And we were just struggling to balance with the limited number of people that we had, with all the requests that were coming in, and just a lot of angry internal customers. So one of the things that we did, this idea that we had, was we installed a whiteboard in the hallway right off the elevator. And my team sat in cubicles right along this hallway, and we instituted a standing meeting every morning, 5 days a week. We did this for 3 or 4 months. That's all it took. We kind of achieved the purpose of this and the goal. But we would stand up, and we did a little bit of, if you're familiar with the term, kind of a Kanban list. What we put up said, here's the things that we have to do. As new requests came in over the day, we kind of put them up on to-do. We said, here's what's in progress, and we prioritized those. We wrote who was working on them and expected delivery time, and then we had our completed list. And every morning we'd stand up and we'd say, okay, look at all the new requests that are coming in, and we'd look at our list of priorities and who was working on what, and we would say, okay, are any of these new requests a higher priority than anything that we're working on today? And occasionally what would happen is a new request would come in, and we'd understand its urgency and how it impacted the other items in progress, and so we would make changes to that. And inevitably, what happened is that we would wrap up our meeting, and by the way, people are arriving in the morning, they're having to kind of walk through our meeting, so we did that intentionally. But that people would then come over and we'd kind of watch them, they'd come and study the board. And occasionally you'd have somebody whose item was like number 2 get knocked down to number 4, number 5, come over angry like, hey, yesterday you had somebody working on my project and it's urgent, and what's going on? Now you've got me in number 4. And we'd walk back over and say, look, this is the request. Here's the nature of this request that came in. Here's what's driving it. Do you agree with this or not? And most times, because we thought through this process, they'd say, okay, we understand the logic there. We understand what's going on. And this, as I said, this happened for 3 or 4 months that we did this. And it was about providing the transparency to help people understand. It was like a reset on the communication process. What's funny is after a year of doing this exact same thing up in SharePoint and providing weekly email statuses, and my PMs meeting with the various leaders and giving them, stats, on demand every day, meeting with them. a request came in from my director after they said, hey, this whole whiteboard, this was fantastic. Would be great is if you could present this same information in SharePoint. Amazingly, we were able to present that the same day. It was already there. What a great idea. But it was about, we were able to get this shared understanding of what our priorities were, what we were working on, and communicate that out. Every SharePoint deployment starts as a business analyst activity. You need to have that clear picture of what you're trying to achieve, what the barriers are, what the goals are, before you attempt to achieve it. So it's one thing for people to come over and make demands like, hey, I need this requirement, and say, okay, look, this is what I'm already working on. This is where we believe the priority is. If you disagree, let's have that discussion. But by having this change management body, this governance body, it allowed us to really go in and surface ideas. And we'd always tell people, it's like, don't shoot down an idea that somebody puts out there because it may be valid. It may be a bad idea. It could very possibly be a bad idea. But usually when you're bringing forward these ideas, it's helping surface. It may be in itself not a great idea, but it surfaces that there's a need somewhere, a requirement that's not being met, or it may be part of, and you need to better explain something that you're already doing. So you want to surface all of those things. And then, of course, don't jump into the solution until you can agree what should be solved, what can be solved, and prioritize those things, which is the hardest part of this process. All of these ideas coming in, all of these things that you want to do, you can only do so many, and you need to prioritize those things. And then, of course, leverage data from your system to do that. So how are people using the system today? How are they leveraging alternate technologies? Are they using Dropbox? Are they using some Google products? Are they going elsewhere because you're not able to deliver quick enough? What is the request backlog that you're trying to achieve? So as part of this instituting collaboration and iteration, you need to have some core reporting in place so you can monitor those usage patterns. And this is a bit of what IntLock is going to be talking about. This is their strength. A lot of people just aren't aware of what's available out of the box and what's available through the partner ecosystem that can help them better keep track of what's actually happening inside of their environment. Because if you're monitoring those usage patterns, then what the data shows you may change your priorities of what you're working on. So you need to have dashboards for your leadership, not just of dashboards around the data, the projects that are in SharePoint, but around what is happening in SharePoint itself. And then you need to, based on that data, you need to iterate and refine based on what you learn. So it's not so much about changing things and more about innovating. And I kind of define that. Change is where you're correcting something. You've deployed it, you're adapting, you're iterating, you're refining based on what you're learning, versus an innovation is as the rate of change decreases, you're actually able to leverage what you're learning to go do something new. So it's about creating value, not just creating change, but creating value. Of course, you can't manage what you can't measure, so that's why I think this is we're talking about our process of going in and working with customers, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. Then I'll hand off to IntLock here. So another couple slides, but how Beezy uses these concepts. When we go in and work with customers, breaking down those barriers between business IT is fundamental to how we approach our customer engagements. And we're a product company, not a consulting company, so a lot of this is done with our partners, with our consulting partners. But we begin by bringing everybody together, trying to come up with that shared understanding of what the system should look like, what their current systems do, where they believe that they're lacking, and then we show them what other customers are doing, other examples, what we view as the best practices, and of course, working with our partner and using our experiences. That's why customers, end user customers, come to our partners and come to us is because we help them kind of envision and act on what they're unable to achieve on their own. But we always pilot first. Always pilot first. You're rolling out something new. It needs to be adapted. It needs to be iterated on to fit your culture, to fit your unique requirements. And we iterate then as we learn about the organization. So we're constantly reviewing the data. How are people using it? There's been a lot of talk in the Microsoft space about A/B testing, about monitoring new features as they're deployed through Office 365, and if they're not being used, does Microsoft continue to develop on those features? So you need to constantly validate what you've learned and iterate. And then throughout that process, watch the usage patterns, because you might get 6 months in and realize that as an organization you're matured now that you've moved to more collaborative space. What you actually need for your business to innovate might be very different than what you deployed 6 months earlier. And so we think of the user experience and adoption. It really is about that that extra mile, that there's the out-of-the-box experience. So much of this focus on iteration and adding other functionalities about that extra miles, about focusing on those things which are going to help your organization innovate. And that's really where what Beezy concentrates on. So even the nature of our solutions, it lends itself towards that communication, about connecting business and IT around communities in conversation. So this is our out-of-the-box product. We iterate then on the design, the look and feel, to get it to fit with what that organization needs. We add additional capability, again, to help them get more out of the way that they're working. By monitoring how they're actually using, which features they're using, we can go in and then enhance that experience. Great example, and just to wrap up here, is one of our customers, Vodafone. It's a great case study. I know that screen there is not that impressive because it's all fuzzed out here, but here we have over 75,000 employees that are within the Vodafone Circle environment, which is based on Beezy. They have over 42,000 employees using it, and they've had double-digit adoption. And all of this comes from this. It's one, listening to the end user needs and bringing IT together with those end user requirements and having this conversation about what's working, what's not working, and then iterating on those things. It's never just about, hey, we have some technology, here we'll install it, and there you go. That has been again and again and again at the top of the failure list for SharePoint. I'm sure most of your organizations have had that experience where you've deployed it, you've said, okay, we've added end users, go to it, and it has not been successful. And that's been our experience as well, that when you sit down and have conversations and help the two sides come together and agree and then iterate on those agreements as you learn together, that's where we've seen success. And it really is kind of a natural transition. And Marley, just to kind of push it back into your side, it's a great segue into what CardioLog provides. And so I'm going to hand that back over to you and let you talk about what you guys provide.
Sure.
And how that level of information can help in your iterative process as you learn about how your users are actually taking advantage of SharePoint.
All right.
Let me get back into... Open up my viewer here. Hang on.
In the meantime, I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us through this webinar and staying engaged. Christian, that was really a great presentation, really insightful. I think people can take many things away from that presentation, and really nice real-world experience. And I do want to say that at this time, we are experiencing some technical difficulties on our end. So what we've decided to do is actually we will be talking about CardioLog and in general SharePoint analytics in a session sort of as a part 2 session that we would like to present for you guys sometime next week. We will send an invitation to everyone with the updated invitation so you can get a really in-depth understanding of how SharePoint Analytics can help breaking down these silos that Christian mentioned and these barriers. And again, I'm really sorry for the inconvenience, but we are going to have to reschedule on our end due to these technical difficulties. So I wanted to, I guess at this point, because we will be extending the session for next week to have a kind of solo session for analytics, I wanted to just start the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions in terms of social collaboration and kind of bridging IT and business from Christian's presentation, we would be happy for you to enter these questions in at this time, and we'll be happy to take these question and answers.
Yeah, and I'm happy to discuss if anybody has any questions about some of the ways that Beezy approaches our customer engagements, and in my experience, I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay, so we'll give you guys a few minutes if anyone has anything else to add. And again, thank you guys again for sticking with us. We really appreciate that, and sorry for the inconvenience. It's never fun with having technical difficulties in real time, so.
Well, as always, if there's any follow-up questions, you can always reach me offline. My email is cbuck@beezy.net. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at BuckleyPlanet. I'm always happy to take the conversation offline. I know that a lot of people we've got a couple questions that popped up, but you know, if you have kind of a longer topic and talking about what's happening in your organization and are looking for some best practices or some ideas, happy to field those. Is there a plan to release a plugin to integrate Beezy stats into CardioLog in the near future? Yeah, that's a great question, and so we've been talking about that since this summer about doing that. So that is something that Intlock and Beezy are talking about doing. Don't have a time frame for it, but we're going to see each other in Stockholm at the European SharePoint Conference, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that more in 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's definitely a buzz going around, so hopefully we can further collaborate.
Yeah, because our plan is not to go and try and duplicate what various partners like Intlock are doing, but to rather to let them have their strengths there and leverage those. So we either push people to out-of-the-box SharePoint analytics or over to partner solutions.
Great. And again, if anyone has any questions for us, you can always contact us at info@intlock.com, and we will be sending out an invitation to everyone who attended the webinar today for the second part of the series for next week due to our technical issues. And I hope you guys will stick with us because we really do have an exciting presentation on how analytics can kind of bridge this gap as well as social collaboration. So. And Christian definitely had a very nice introduction for us.
Yeah, I lined it up for you.
Yeah.
There you go. That's right. When when your power is out, there's not a lot you can do. So.
All right. Well, I don't see any further questions at the moment, but again, if anyone, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer them. And thanks again, Christian, for joining us. And we look forward to.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and we look forward to meeting with everyone next week for the second part of the series.
Yep, no worries.
Okay.
All right, thanks a
Have a
lot.
great day, everyone. Thanks.